She slowly put bleach in her husband's coffee in an effort to make sure he sleeps 6 feet deep. But he found out. This grandma is a career criminal who wasn't sorry for what crime she did in her life. This girl committed an unthinkable crime that none of us would do just to satisfy her curiosity. And this Asian Kim Kardashian lookalike decided to get rid of her debt by getting rid of the people she owed money to. Let's find out just who else we covered in 2024 that are the true, crazy, despicable psychopaths in this marathon video. Who are some criminals who just love to do crime? What would you do if you discovered your wife pouring bleach in your coffee every day? And what about this lady who's not sorry at all for her criminal career dating back to 1961? What about this Chinese money laundering gang who was caught laundering millions of pounds? Then there's this kingpin who probably wouldn't have gotten caught if it weren't for his girlfriend and her social media posting ways. Let's get right to it, starting with number 7, awful coffee. Melody Filicano Johnson, a 39-year-old woman from Arizona, was arrested after being accused of putting bleach in her husband, Roby Johnson's coffee. But somehow, despite Roby's clear video evidence, Melody didn't end up going to prison for the attempt on his life. Roby Johnson, an active member of the U.S. Air Force, became suspicious when his coffee began to taste off while he was stationed in Germany with his wife. The couple were in the middle of a divorce but still lived together, so obviously they had a strained relationship. Because of that, Roby became suspicious that Melody might be trying to poison him, possibly in an attempt to collect his life insurance benefits. So, Roby set up hidden cameras in their home after testing the water from the coffee marker with pool chemical strips revealing high chlorine levels. The footage captured Melody pouring bleach into a container in the laundry room and then transferring it into the coffee machine. Despite Roby's suspicions, he continued pretending to drink the coffee while gathering evidence. When the couple returned to the U.S., Roby installed higher quality cameras, which caught Melody in the act again. He reported the incident to the Tucson police, but initial video evidence was deemed inconclusive. However, after more footage was collected, Melody was arrested. Authorities then executed a search warrant and found that the coffee machine had a strong bleach smell, pretty much sealing the deal. Though initially facing charges of her attempted first-degree plot, Melody later pleaded guilty to 2 counts related to adding the toxic substances to her husband's coffee. At the time of her sentencing, she was facing up to 4 years in prison. What ended up surprising everyone was, despite the severity of the situation, Roby requested leniency, explaining that he didn't want Melody to serve prison time. So ultimately, she only received 3 years of probation, including mandatory mental health treatment. She had already spent nearly a year in custody because she couldn't post her $250,000 bond, which Roby must have thought was good enough. It makes you wonder, though, why should you use something that has such a strong, recognizable smell if you're trying to covertly slip it into someone's drink, right? Not that we're criminal masterminds or anything, but why did she even continue using bleach if it didn't do the job the first time? At the end of the day, though, we're just glad that Melody wasn't very good at what she was doing. Number 6, career thief granny. Doris Payne, an infamous jewel thief, spent decades swiping high-end jewelry from stores around the world. At a ripe old age of 86 years old, she was once again caught for attempting to steal a $2,000 necklace from a store in an Atlanta suburb. This incident wasn't her first run-in with the law, as she had been arrested numerous times for similar crimes, making headlines each time. Known for her brazenness and cunning, Payne had become somewhat of a legend in the world of crime. Her story started back in the 1950s, but her first theft dated even further back to when she was just 12 years old. Payne stole a wristwatch, igniting a lifetime of jewel heists that took her from local shops to high-end boutiques in places like Monaco. Over the years, she developed a strategy that allowed her to pull off these crimes with ease. She didn't rely on brute force or complex heists, but rather on her ability to blend in. Payne used a combination of charm, elegance, and confidence to manipulate her targets. She would walk into a jewelry store dressed in designer clothing, portraying herself as a wealthy and discerning customer. Once inside, Payne would take her time, asking to see various expensive pieces and engaging with the staff to distract them. Her ability to build rapport with salespeople was essential to her method. She often made them believe she was genuinely interested in purchasing something, which allowed her to get close to the items without raising suspicion. As the staff's attention shifted, Payne would seize the opportunity to slip a piece of jewelry into her pocket or bag. Payne also knew how to create confusion and subtly take control of the situation. She once said that the store employees dictated what happened, not her. She merely took advantage of the situation they allowed. Her calm demeanor and lack of haste meant that by the time anyone realized something was missing, she was already long gone. Despite being caught multiple times, Payne rarely expressed regret for her actions. She saw herself as someone taking what she felt the world owed her, especially after a shopkeeper once treated her poorly in her youth. With each theft, she lived a life of luxury, buying expensive clothes, traveling the world, and enjoying fine dining. Payne's most significant heist occurred in Monaco, where she swiped a massive diamond ring and later sold it for over $500,000. Even in her later years, Payne couldn't resist the thrill of the heist. After serving time for several incidents, she found herself arrested yet again, this time for shoplifting at a Walmart, which is a pretty far fall from Monaco. Don't forget grandmas are criminals too. Just like this grandma who decided to steal TVs with her grandson. We'll cover this story in depth in a later video. 5. The town budget. Ursula Stone, a former village clerk who managed records, finances, and administrative tasks for a small municipality in upstate New York, was caught embezzling over $1 million in village funds, a sum nearly equal to the town's entire annual budget. Yes, apparently there's still villages in this day and age, and this particular village had a low-down, dirty thief. State officials uncovered that Stone, over the course of her employment, manipulated the village's finances without any oversight. She handled payroll, leave records, and health insurance buyouts, all without the necessary approval from higher officials. By taking advantage of this unchecked power, she gave herself unauthorized raises, cashed out vacation time she wasn't entitled to, and even stole checks intended for the local school district and the village itself. Stone's scheme finally unraveled after 20 years when the New York State Comptroller's Office decided to conduct an audit back in 2022, revealing her mismanagement and theft. Despite her resignation in 2023, Stone tried to sneak one last payout, a check for over $26,000. But authorities caught it before it could be cashed. Prosecutors alleged that Stone stole over $1 million, though she admitted to only taking around $100,000. Ultimately, Stone was handed 3 to 9 years in prison for embezzling over $1.1 million from village funds over nearly 2 decades. She forfeited her pension and was ordered to pay full restitution. This case was the first time a public official in New York has been forced to forfeit their pension under anti-corruption laws. If that's interesting to anyone. And what was she even thinking trying to get that last check on her way out the door like she wasn't being watched? It's like she was slick for 20 years and then she gets caught and her brain just turns off? We can just picture some judge slapping the check out of her hand and shouting, "What's wrong with you? Put that back." Number 4. The Hunt for Refunds. Narinder Kaur, a 54-year-old from the UK, was sentenced to 10 years for defrauding major UK retailers. Over 4 years, Kaur managed to con popular retail chains such as Debenhams, John Lewis, and Boots, which are basically UK versions of Macy's, Bloomingdale's, and CVS, out of nearly $625,000 by tricking them into giving her refunds for items she had stolen. Kaur's fraudulent activities were described as a full-time operation, working 6 days a week, 8 to 9 hours each day. She would enter stores, take items off the shelves, and then return them for refunds, claiming she had lost the receipt. Kaur would often make small legitimate purchases to back up her claims, securing refunds for both the stolen and purchased goods. Her largest single scam was at Boots, the CVS equivalent, where she received around $75,000 in refunds, despite only spending about $6,500 during that period. Kaur replicated this tactic across several other well-known retailers, racking up thousands in refunds, including $55,000 from Debenhams and $42,000 from John Lewis. Not only did Kaur scam retailers, but she also defrauded law firms by using stolen credit cards to funnel compensation payments into her own accounts. When Kaur was finally arrested, she produced fake documents to manipulate the court and attempted to avoid her speeding fines to ease her bail conditions. Despite her absence in court during sentencing, she apparently just didn't want to be there for obvious reasons. Kaur's crimes were labeled as a tsunami of dishonesty by the judge, who handed her 10 years. Kaur's relentless scams left her with around $200,000 in cash hidden around her home, along with a collection of stolen goods, making her one of the most persistent fraudsters the authorities had ever encountered. It's crazy that she legit spent 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, shoplifting and returning stuff, right? Like, at what point is that no longer a grift and just a job that you can get arrested? Number 3. Phantom payments. Gloria Stern, a Los Angeles bakery owner known for her unique edible flour creations, was caught in a shocking scam that left her both financially and emotionally shaken. Her bakery, Eat Your Flowers, usually focuses on cookies and cakes. So when she received an online order for 1,000 cupcakes, she found it a bit unusual. But with the potential for a good payday, she took the order and got to work. Things seemed to be going smoothly when the customer sent a check for just over $7,500 by priority mail. Gloria even visited her bank for advice since it was such a large order, and once the funds cleared, she felt reassured. Confident everything was legitimate, she bought the necessary ingredients and got to baking. Then, the twist came. The customer reached out and requested to cut the order in half, asking for a refund on the difference. Gloria refused, explaining they had already bought everything and began the process. The bank even assured her that her invoice and communication would protect her. But what happened next left everyone stunned. The very next day, the funds disappeared from her account, and the check had been flagged as counterfeit. It turned out that scammers had stolen another company's checkbook and had written a bunch of fraudulent checks to multiple businesses like hers. When Gloria reached out to the company listed on the check, she learned she wasn't alone. She was the 15th person that day to call about the same scam. Many of the victims were small businesses like bakeries and landscaping companies. Everyone had rushed to buy supplies only to be asked for a refund after the counterfeit checks cleared. Though Gloria managed to sell some of the cupcakes, she still faced a hefty financial loss. The experience left her disillusioned, but she hopes her story will warn others about the risks small businesses face with scams like this. This leaves us with a question though. Should the bank be the one to take the financial hit on this? It seems that Gloria did everything a reasonable person would be expected to do in such a situation. She was assured by the bank that the large check was valid after the funds cleared. She was then further reassured by the bank that everything was okie dokie when she was asked for a refund in what's a somewhat common scam. But then again, banks often warn customers that even if funds are made available, it doesn't guarantee the check is valid, and they may still be reversed if the check turns out to be fraudulent. So who takes the hit here? Let us know in the comments below. Number 2. 55 million pounds. A group of criminals involved in a massive money laundering scheme has been sentenced to nearly 25 years in prison collectively. At the center of it all was 29-year-old Kiji Wang from Manchester, who ran the operation under the online alias There Is a Big Sun in the Sky. Wang and his team moved over 55 million pounds through secret channels between February of 2020 and June of 2023 using a Chinese messaging app to coordinate their illegal activities. But what the police uncovered during their investigation was far more shocking. Wang was initially caught after police began investigating suspicious underground banking activity. His involvement was revealed following a series of raids in late 2022, where large sums of cash were found at the homes of his associates. During these raids, authorities uncovered mobile phones and communication records, revealing that Wang, operating the somewhat ironic alias "There is a big sun in the sky," was the mastermind behind the operation. This was part of a 3-year investigation that exposed an international money laundering network. Police raids revealed large amounts of cash hidden in the homes of Wang's associates, along with cash counting machines and mobile devices filled with evidence of their illegal activities. An interesting aspect of the operation was its connection to Chinese university students. Wang's group helped students exchange British pounds to bypass currency restrictions in China. The students were limited in how much money they could take out of the country each year, so the gang provided a way to move cash illegally without drawing attention. Wang's accomplices, including a couple of guys named Zhao Yu Shu and Yin Ying Wang, were found with over 100,000 pounds hidden in a wardrobe. The group handled significant sums of cash, sometimes as much as 250,000 pounds in a single transaction. To maintain secrecy, they used a method where they exchanged photos of 5-pound notes with specific serial numbers to confirm the money transfer, ensuring that neither party knew the identity of the other. In total, officers seized nearly 500,000 pounds in assets, including high-end items and electronic devices used to track their illegal profits. Further searches at other properties uncovered even more cash, money counting machines, and ledgers that detailed every transaction the gang had processed over the years. By the end of the investigation, 7 people, including Wang, Shu, and Huang, were handed significant prison sentences. Wang received the longest sentence of 12 years, and their system of exchanging photos of 5-pound notes to verify transactions? Sure, it probably slowed things down, but seriously, imagine laundering millions, 1 fiver at a time. All that effort, and it still wasn't enough to keep them from getting caught. Number 1. Cartel wives and social media. Ronald Roland, a notorious figure in Brazil, was arrested after a 2-year search for his role in a large-scale criminal network. Authorities had been chasing this slippery little devil for years, but what ultimately sealed his fate was beyond absurd. Roland became notorious due to his involvement in smuggling operations and money laundering schemes. Over the years, he built strong connections with cartels, smuggling illegal substances between Central and South America, and laundering an estimated $900 million through various businesses. His love for luxury, from expensive cars to high-end vacations, made him stand out. The guy was living like a real-life Tony Montana, and it showed. Authorities had been investigating him for years, but despite their efforts, they could never really pin down his location. He was always one step ahead. Roland was finally caught at his luxury condo with his wife Andresa de Lima and their daughter. De Lima, who owned a bikini shop, regularly shared photos of their lavish vacations to places like Dubai and France, flaunting their life about private jets. One of her posts gave away their exact location, leading police right to them after a 2-year manhunt. Roland was arrested, along with 7 others, in a major operation spanning 7 states. Authorities seized millions in cash, jewelry, 34 luxury cars, a boat, and even a private jet. Investigators confirmed that Roland laundered nearly $900 million over the past 5 years through a network of businesses, including his wife's bikini shop. Roland's extravagant purchases had drawn attention long before his capture. One day, he'd been seen in a $90,000 car, and the next week, he'd have another worth double that. Authorities had been monitoring him since 2012, following his connections to major smuggling rings in Central and South America. The ridiculous thing about the arrest was this wasn't the first time social media played a part in his getting busted. Apparently, Roland's ex-wife accidentally revealed their location on Instagram as well, leading to his arrest back in 2019. He was released in 2020 under supervision, but it didn't take long for him to return to his old ways. Seriously, hasn't this guy ever watched The Godfather? Rule number 1 of running a criminal enterprise: no photos, especially not on social media with location tags. It's already ridiculous that this happened once, let alone twice. It's almost like, well, whose fault is it he got caught? Maybe it's time to pick smarter partners, or at least learn how to turn off location services on the phones. What are a few of the most unbelievable and wildest crimes people actually committed? Such as this girl actually going after someone just to go after someone. Or what about this girl who decided to take over her Uber ride just because her driver was going too slow? Then there's this guy who actually went after and then lived with his roommate's body for months. And this guy who just loved hamsters too much. Let's find out, starting with number 7. From true crime to actual life. Jung Yoo Jung, a 23-year-old woman from Busan, South Korea, was arrested on charges of committing a brutal and senseless crime. According to police, Jung ended the life of a private tutor she had no prior connection with, driven purely by curiosity about the act of ending someone's life. Her case has drawn significant attention due to its impersonal nature, and that she was apparently obsessed with true crime stories. Jung had developed a deep fascination with true crime shows, books, and online forums, where she spent considerable time researching the details of brutal crimes. Investigators revealed that her fixation led to her plot what she believed would be the perfect crime. Jung meticulously prepared by studying how to conceal a body and dismember a victim, all while posing as an ordinary person. Using an app that connects parents with tutors, Jung pretended to be a high school student in need of academic assistance. She arranged to meet a tutor at the victim's home, wearing a school uniform she had purchased online to help disguise her identity. When she gained access to the house, she went after the tutor, ending her life in a senseless act. Following the insane act, Jung attempted to clean up the scene, purchasing bleach and trash bags from a nearby store. She dismembered the victim's body and placed the remains in a suitcase, planning to dispose of them in a secluded area. However, her erratic behavior raised suspicion. A taxi driver who had driven her to the wooded area where she intended to dump the body thought the whole ride was strange, especially when she went to toss a suitcase that was stained by the contents. Understandably freaked out, he quickly alerted authorities. Police arrested Jung soon after, discovering incriminating evidence, including stained clothes and other personal items belonging to the victim. Although Jung initially claimed there had been a dispute with the tutor, she later confessed to the crime under pressure from her family and after holes appeared in her original story. As of the release of this video, the South Korean Supreme Court has given Jung a life sentence. Jung had initially appealed for a lighter punishment, but the court rejected her appeal, confirming that she'll serve life in prison, along with wearing a tracking device for 30 years. And that seems like the right choice, since her psychopathy test results also indicated a high level of detachment, scoring 28 out of 40, far above the typical threshold of concern. For reference, individuals without psychopathic traits usually score around 15 or lower. Here's an interesting finding we all should be aware of. Did you know that the people who stay friends with their ex are more likely to be psychopaths? According to research done at Oakland University by psychologists Justin Magilski and Lisa Welling, people with dark personality traits are more likely to stay in touch with their past flames. Number 6. The Impatient Rider. Nusha Alexandra Afkami, a 27-year-old woman from California, was arrested after stealing her Uber driver's car. The carjacking went down during a late-night trip to the Austin Bergstrom International Airport in Texas. Apparently, Afkami, who had places to be and feels like she's very important, got frustrated with the speed of the ride and let her driver know it. When the Uber driver briefly exited the vehicle to retrieve their phone, because Afkami had thrown it out the window, she seized the moment and stole the car. The Uber driver was left stranded near the road and immediately called airport authorities. The police located the stolen vehicle, a 2016 Chevrolet Cruze, parked outside a terminal, and Afkhami was later arrested before she could board her flight. Apparently, Afkhami had used the driver's credit card at an airport store, spending around $120 on airport stuff, including a shot glass and candy. When questioned, she said that she had taken the car because she needed to reach the airport in a hurry, which doesn't exactly explain why she stole the driver's credit card and used it, but whatever. Crazy gonna crazy, right? Afkhami faced charges of unauthorized use of a motor vehicle and credit card fraud. This also wasn't her first brush with the law. Public records indicate Speedy Afkhami has 11 previous traffic violations. Surprise, surprise, dating back to 2015. We're not exactly sure what the plan here, though, was. Did she think she could just drive to the airport and nothing would happen? Uber literally has all of her information, and the driver was left with his cell phone. And then she used the card at the airport. Number 5. The escape attempt. Roma Lawson, an actress of the, let's just say, more sultry type, got in some serious legal trouble after a chaotic series of events. Lawson, who is under the influence of nose beers, was arrested on suspicion of driving while intoxicated after crashing her car into a van. What followed was a wild sequence of events that led to her eventual arrest and court appearance. After failing a roadside sobriety test, Lawson was placed in the back of a police car, but things quickly spiraled out of control. While being transported to the station, she quietly undid her seatbelt and, at just the right moment, leaped into the front of the vehicle, initiating a physical struggle with the officers. Though one officer grabbed her leg, she slipped free, leaving behind her pants and running through the streets half-dressed. Lawson managed to evade capture for 90 minutes, hiding at a friend's house before the police tracked her down. Even after her rearrest, she continued to resist, making repeated attempts to escape at the hospital. At one point, she lunged at an officer, biting her on the thigh, which just resulted in some bruising. The court heard that Lawson had a history of criminal behavior with 10 previous convictions. Her defense offered her chaotic lifestyle as a reason for her behavior, citing family tragedies, unstable relationships, and a long-standing nose beer problem. Despite her actions, Lawson expressed remorse and even wrote a letter to the officer she had bitten, explaining that she hadn't meant to harm her. Judge Catherine Brown handed down an 8-month suspended sentence and required Lawson to complete 20 days of probation, with the feeling that her actions were likely fueled by her loss of control while under the influence. Yeah, that's our take 2. Number 4. Not handling Vegas. Matthew John Ermond Mannix, a man from Colorado, was sentenced to serve a minimum of 19 months and maximum of 48 months in prison after a crazy incident at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Apparently, Mannix decided he should barricade himself in a 21st floor hotel room where he then began throwing furniture out the window, which led to the evacuation of the hotel's pool area. The incident, which lasted for 5 hours, ended without serious injuries. At the time, police had responded to reports of a domestic disturbance. It was revealed that Mannix had held a woman in the room against her will and was threatening physical conflict if the police tried to enter. Both he and the woman had allegedly used some substances for several days prior to the standoff, which clearly contributed to the entire thing. In a later interview, Mannix said he didn't really remember what had happened during the event, admitting that he had been using various substances at the time. At one point, he was even seen on drone footage appearing to use a pipe, likely to continue his use of those illegal substances. Mannix ultimately pleaded guilty to felony property destruction and misdemeanor negligence. As part of the agreement, he was ordered to pay approximately $55,300 in restitution. The judge recommended that he participate in a rehabilitation program during his time in the Nevada Department of Corrections. After completing his sentence in Nevada, Mannix is expected to be extradited back to Colorado to serve time for a probation violation related to his previous unrelated kidnapping conviction. His attorney said that Mannix was remorseful and looking forward to confronting his problems. Number 3. Thwarted carjacking. Florida woman Marvette Perry was arrested in Ormond Beach, Florida, after a failed carjacking attempt that was thwarted by a quick-thinking bystander. Apparently, Perry had approached a car parked at a gas station while the owner was stepping away to use the restroom. Without hesitation, Perry forced her way into the vehicle, which had the man's wife sitting in the passenger seat, GTA style. Speaking of GTA, here's an interesting fact about Grand Theft Auto. For GTA 5, the developers hired real gang members to voice the NPCs. Anyways, once Perry got in, the passenger quickly reacted, grabbing Perry's leg in an attempt to stop her from driving off. Meanwhile, another guy at the gas station, Adam McDaniel, who was visiting from North Carolina, happened to notice the chaotic scene. McDaniel had been pumping gas when he saw Perry acting suspiciously and, sensing trouble, retrieved his firearm from his vehicle. While he didn't fire the weapon, since the dude sounds like a responsible weapon owner, he held Perry at bay with his firearm long enough for the car owner to regain control of the situation. The police arrived shortly after, finding the car owner still holding on to Perry's leg to keep her from fleeing. Despite initially resisting arrest, she was eventually detained and taken into custody. Perry faced multiple charges, including carjacking, burglary, and resisting an officer. Perry later explained to the police that she had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and claimed that stress prompted her actions. Thankfully, no one was injured during the incident, though the situation could have easily escalated without McDaniel's intervention. As of the release of this video, Perry is still awaiting trial. Number 2. The Terrible Secret. Las Vegas resident George Anthony Bone was arrested for causing the demise of his roommate Beverly Ma. Ma's body was found decomposing in a closet, barricaded for 2 months, while Bone continued to live in the home. Bone, a registered offender of the type you'd guess, claimed he was too scared to report the passing, fearing Ma would come back to life. Police arrested him after Ma's family discovered her body during a visit to check on high air conditioning bills. Beverly Ma, a longtime friend of Bone's from high school, had moved in with him the previous summer in a house her parents owned. Despite their close relationship, their living situation ended in tragedy. Bone initially told investigators that Ma had taken her own life, but police later said her passing was more likely due to foul play. Police later found evidence of a conflict, which suggested she lost her life on the same day a frantic 911 call was placed from her phone. In that call, a man and woman could be heard yelling, with the call ending in an ominous plea. However, when officers arrived at the scene, no one responded to their knocks, and they left without further investigation, which is kind of weird, right? We're not police, and we know people have a right to privacy, but it seems to us that a call like that would be enough probable cause to break in. Anyway, Bone claimed to have discovered Ma's body that day, but rather than seeking help, he just continued living his creepy life with Ma's body decaying in the closet. Over the following months, Bone allegedly continued using Ma's finances for personal purchases. He ordered 171 items from Amazon using her account, accumulating over $10,000 in charges. He even texted people from her phone, claiming she couldn't attend social events because she wanted to avoid people and stay sober. Bone's peculiar behavior included setting the home's thermostat to 60 degrees in an attempt to reduce the number of flies in the house. This was part of his effort to manage the decay of Ma's body, which he believed could return to haunt him. When questioned, he admitted to being overly superstitious and distraught, a result of watching too many horror movies. Further investigation revealed that Ma's passing wasn't self-inflicted. Evidence pointed to trauma to her head, possibly caused by a hammer found at the scene. Bone now faces multiple charges. A grand jury indicted him after police uncovered the details of his behavior and attempts to hide the crime. As of the release of this video, Bone remains in custody and was found competent enough to stand trial. We're not exactly sure how they found him competent enough to stand trial, since the guy thinks zombies are real, but apparently he was. However, we don't think he'll be seeing the light of day for a long time. Number 1. He loved hamsters. Matthew Pancake, 31, was taken into custody after allegedly breaking into multiple stores in a Columbus, Ohio suburb. According to police reports, Pancake's bizarre spree began when he smashed the glass doors of a famous footwear store during the early morning hours. His unusual outfit, a leopard print onesie, caught attention as he was arrested. And he didn't just stop at the shoe store. Pancake also broke into a Rooster's restaurant in a nearby Petland. It was at Petland that his behavior took an even stranger turn. Officers discovered 2 hamsters stuffed in the pockets of Pancake's onesie at the time of his arrest. Police were already investigating the break-ins when they received another call about Petland. Upon arrival, they found a bunch of animals loose in the parking lot. Officers managed to round up several animals, including rabbits, birds, and puppies. The store's dog kennels had been smashed, allowing the animals to escape. Pancake's spree ended when officers found him sleeping on a bench near a Big Lots parking lot not far from the pet store. Police body cam footage captured the moment they woke him up and pulled him to the ground. Pancake, seemingly confused, questioned why he was being arrested. The officers quickly explained the situation to him. As they prepared to take him into custody, one officer noticed something moving in Pancake's pocket. To their surprise, they found the hamsters, leading to some laughter among the officers. Despite the humor, Pancake's actions were taken seriously. He was charged with vandalism and breaking and entering. What are some of the most despicable crimes that people will do? Will honey trappers such as these people ever stop robbing guys? The answer is no. How about this guy who decided to go after a girl he met off of a sugar daddy site he was on? Then there's the rap star's son who decided to, instead of getting into the music business, he apparently decided to get into the getting rid of people business. And then what's a worse scenario than walking into your house and finding squatters when they immediately come after you because you unexpectedly walked in on them? Let's get right to it. Number 6, laying traps. Sidney Whitaker was charged and put in prison in connection with a robbery at a North Dallas apartment complex. Whitaker, along with 2 men, Jeroy Rogers and Tyrone Williams, were stuck with some serious charges for their roles in the incident. According to police, the situation began when Whitaker arranged to meet then 21-year-old Adrian Wells under the guise of a personal, intimate encounter. On the day of the robbery, Whitaker contacted Wells expressing interest in meeting up at his apartment. So, Wells agreed, expecting to meet only her. However, when he went to let her in, 3 armed men forced their way inside instead. The thing is, Wells wasn't alone in the 3-story apartment, as his friends were upstairs watching TV. One of the robbers demanded cash from the group before firearms started going off. Tragically, Wells didn't survive the encounter, and another man was critically injured. It was later revealed that Whitaker had only met Wells the day before. Suspicion grew when one of Wells' friends told police that he found it strange Whitaker wanted to meet again so soon and that she was ready for some intimate time. He thinks she might have set Wells up. Witnesses also reported seeing a woman with a tattoo on her face, later identified as Whitaker, running from the scene. When a bystander asked her if everything was okay, she said no, but kept moving, which isn't typically what someone does if they need help or aren't okay, you know? Though Whitaker initially agreed to talk to the police, she never showed up for the interview. Family members later told investigators that she admitted to being involved, but claimed she only drove the 3 men to Wells' apartment to buy some devil's lettuce and stayed in the car. Whitaker was arrested and given a 10-year sentence for her role. The only reason we found out about her sentencing was because of her profile on writeaprisoner.com. There's no public information either on the sentencing for Rogers and Williams, but if we had to guess, they're probably in prison as well. When something feels wrong, or when someone moves too quickly, it's a red flag. It's always a good idea to trust your instincts, slow things down, and be cautious when meeting new people, no matter how safe the setting seems. Number 5. Good to bad intentions. Sugar daddy Bobby Shaw was charged with an incident involving Muna Pandey, a 21-year-old nursing student from Houston Community College. Muna, originally from Nepal, was found in her apartment after being reported missing. Shaw's connection to the case was made after someone recognized him from a sugar daddy website following the release of security footage by authorities. Security footage from Muna's apartment captured Shaw approaching her door with a weapon, leading to the tragic incident. Shortly after, a woman contacted Houston police, identifying Shaw from his online profile. Further details revealed that Shaw had frequently visited the restaurant where Muna worked, often leaving large tips for the waitresses he favored. Shaw was arrested a few days later, wearing the same stained clothes seen in the footage. Authorities believe he forced his way into Muna's apartment using threats, then left an hour later with her belongings, including a purse. Before Muna's passing, she had mentioned concerns about a relationship she was in, but it's unclear whether Shaw was involved in that. However, her concerns about the relationship were severe enough that she installed the home security cameras that led to Shaw's eventual capture. Muna's friends and family described her as loving and confident, someone who worked hard to build a future in the United States. Muna's mother, who still lives in Nepal, was told by a family friend, and a GoFundMe was set up to help cover her travel and funeral expenses. As of the release of this video, Shaw's next court appearance is scheduled, and prosecutors are requesting that he remains in custody without bail. It's scary to think that someone like Shaw, a seemingly successful professional, he was the VP of some unnamed company, could become involved in such a crazy and tragic event. His habit of leaving large tips and frequently visiting Muna's workplace, combined with his profile on a sugar daddy site, all painted a troubling picture. Muna's own concerns about a relationship severe enough to install security cameras now seem like early warnings. Number 4. A Florida lawyer with a gambling problem. Jason Penrod, a 47-year-old attorney from Florida, found himself in deep trouble after being accused of taking nearly $2 million from a trust fund set up for a brother and sister. This trust had been established by their father before his passing. Penrod's actions didn't go unnoticed, and eventually complaints surfaced, sparking an investigation. But what made this story so outrageous wasn't just the amount of stolen money, it was how he handled the situation. In a totally absurd move, Penrod actually flew out to Pennsylvania to meet with the siblings face-to-face. During this meeting, he admitted to taking the money. In fact, he actually confessed to draining the entire $1.7 million from the trust. So, to make it right, he promised to pay it all back, explaining that the situation was more like a short-term loan, despite having gambled the funds away at the seminal Hard Rock Casino in Tampa. It's like Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber, rolling up with a briefcase full of IOUs. But at least Christmas was more sincere and actually had something on paper. Penrod even tried to excuse his behavior as the result of repressed memories and stress, claiming that his gambling addiction was to blame. After the confession, he checked himself into a treatment facility, but the damage had already been done. The investigation revealed that Penrod's misconduct extended beyond just these 2 victims. In total, 4 victims were affected, and the amount he had stolen reached around $4 million. Among the victims was a 93-year-old woman who had lost money that her deceased son had left for her care. Despite his claims of mental health struggles, which he obviously has, Penrod's actions led him to lose his law license, and he now faces up to 30 years in prison for grand theft. Authorities are continuing their investigation to determine just how many other people might have been affected by his actions. It's ridiculous that this dude actually flew all the way out to Pennsylvania from Florida to look these 2 people in the eye after he gambled away a couple $1 million of their money and just promised to pay them back. Number 3, a real-life monster. Unless you've been off the internet for the past few months, we're sure you know what's been going on with Sean Diddy Combs. You don't need us to tell you that as of the release of this video, he's currently facing serious accusations engaging in illegal activities related to, let's just call it, adult favors. Among the people who work closely with him is Christina Coram, who has been described as his right hand. However, some now allege she may have played a more sinister role behind the scenes. While Diddy remains in custody after a judge denied his $50 million bail request, Coram hasn't been charged or arrested. Yet rumors are swirling that she had a hand in managing many aspects of Diddy's alleged illicit activities. In fact, a lawsuit brought against Diddy claims that Coram was directly involved in arranging illegal activities, with one source even comparing her role to that of Ghislaine Maxwell, who famously aided Epstein. The legal documents describe how Diddy's employees were allegedly tasked with arranging wild parties, complete with adult workers and hotel rooms prepared with disturbing details, such as the usual party favors, along with baby oil. A lot of it. Coram's name repeatedly comes up in the accusations, though she hasn't commented on the situation. Whether or not Coram was deeply involved remains to be seen. But if any of this is true, it's despicable that anyone could willingly participate in such actions. Helping someone carry out these kinds of requests for the sake of wealth or power is beyond reprehensible. Time will tell how much Coram knew and whether she'll be held accountable for her part in the situation. Number 2. Contract work. Jason Scott, the 23-year-old son of rapper Remy Ma, known for her hit song Lean Back with Fat Joe, as well as being on Love and Hip Hop New York, was indicted in connection with an incident in Queens. Scott, along with 22-year-old Richard Swigert, got hit with some serious charges after being accused of involvement in a 2021 crime that left 47-year-old Darius Guilbao 6 feet deep. Surveillance footage and court records suggest that Jason Scott approached Darius Guilbao in a highly targeted manner. Instead of a chaotic incident as if there were some sort of argument or something, it appears the actions were deliberate, with Scott reportedly discharging his firearm several times. Swigert is also said to have discharged at least 2 rounds before both left the scene. Scott and Swigert have both been held without bail, and prosecutors are building a case that could lead to Scott facing life in prison if convicted. The thing is, this isn't the first time the two have been in trouble with the law. Surprise, surprise. Swigert was linked to 3 other shootings in an 8-month period. Notably, at the time of this arrest, Swigert was already in custody for his involvement in a separate case where a man lost his life outside the Umbrella Hotel in Queens. Scott, on the other hand, was previously charged in a separate case where police found a loaded firearm that he wasn't supposed to have. Scott's mom, Remy Ma, insists her son is innocent because, of course she does. In a statement released through her attorney, she expressed her dedication to supporting him and proving his innocence. How she plans to do that remains to be seen. And of course, like most moms in these situations, she stands by her claim that her son is a good person at heart. The connection between Jason and his friend Richard Swigert paints a troubling picture. With Swigert's record showing his involvement in multiple incidents in just 8 months, it's hard to overlook the company Scott kept. Swigert's ties to several confrontations, including another firearm incident at a karaoke bar in Queens where someone else lost their life, only makes the duo look even more guilty. Both Jason Scott and Richard Swigert were charged for their crime, which authorities suspect may have been a contracted act. Scott's cell phone data and video surveillance played a significant role in linking him to the crime scene. So, despite what his mom says, things aren't looking good. If convicted, Scott faces life in prison without parole, while Swigert could face up to 25 years. The ultimate motive behind the incident is still unclear, though Guilbao had a criminal history involving illegal substances, which probably played a part. As of the release of this video, both Scott and Swigert remain in custody, awaiting further court proceedings. Number 1. evil intentions. Kensley Alston and Hallie Tejada were charged in connection with the tragic incident involving Nadia Vitels, a 52-year-old woman who had just begun moving into her new Manhattan apartment. The charges against the two include burglary, grand larceny, and more, after Vittel's body was discovered inside a duffel bag in her home. The apartment, known for its luxury and direct elevator access, offered privacy to its residents, but also allowed squatters like Alston and Tejada to enter unnoticed. While Vittel's was still moving her stuff in, this was during that in-between time of moving where she was kind of staying at her old place while moving in her new one, Alston and Tejada allegedly gained access to the apartment with a pink suitcase in hand. Over the next 2 days, the two reportedly came and went multiple times. When Vittel's returned 2 days later with her dog, she unknowingly walked in on the teens. The "what are you doing in my house" style confrontation led to her tragic passing, with the cause being identified as blunt force trauma. Alston and Tejada went through her stuff and used Vittel's credit card to make purchases, including a suitcase, which they brought back to the apartment. Later that evening, they were seen leaving the building, carrying 2 suitcases and wearing gloves. Concerned family members requested a wellness check on Vittel's after she hadn't been heard from for a couple days. Inside her apartment, police found her dog alone and noticed unusual damage to a wall. Upon further inspection, Vittel's body was discovered, hidden in a duffel bag for whatever reason. It's weird to go to all that trouble to stuff someone in a duffel bag and just leave it in the apartment to be found later, right? Anyway, authorities eventually tracked Alston and Tejada to Pennsylvania, where they had fled in Vittel's car. During their time on the run, they allegedly used her stolen credit cards to buy luxury items, including a PlayStation 5, clothes, AirPods, and a diamond ring. Their arrest followed a car crash in Pennsylvania, which gave police the lead they needed to locate and apprehend the suspects. As of the release of this video, they're facing trial for their roles in the incident, and both have professed their innocence during initial court appearances. It's scary to think how easy it was for these two to just break in and live in Vittel's house for a couple of days, right? We've all moved before, and this unlucky squatting situation ultimately cost this poor woman her life. What are some of the scariest crimes people will commit? Such as this Las Vegas woman who decided to go after a random guy for no reason. Or this TikTok quote-unquote dentist who had no clue how to do any dental work. Or what about this unhinged lady who pulled up on her neighbor without any warning? Let's find out, starting with number 6, no real reason. Kayla Ellery, a 27-year-old woman from Las Vegas, was arrested and charged with multiple felonies after a random senseless act at an apartment complex. Ellery, who had been recently released on parole for arson, discharged a firearm at Raul Cardoza, a carpet cleaner who was on the job, ending his life while he was just sitting in his van. The incident appears to be completely unprovoked, and Cardoza had no prior interaction with Ellery. Witnesses at the scene described Ellery as acting erratically, checking car doors, and moving around an apartment complex before approaching the van where Cardoza and his brother were taking a break. Ellery pulled out a firearm and discharged the weapon at Cardoza without warning, then fled the scene. Police apprehended her shortly after, and she was found with the weapon and a bag with an illegal substance. Ellery's criminal history is extensive. She had served time for arson after attempting to set fire to a vehicle back in 2022. Her other charges included burglary, domestic battery, and coercion. When arrested for the arson case, she initially provided false information, claiming to be a 52-year-old man before revealing her true identity. Ellery had previously been sentenced to 14 to 36 years in prison, but somehow got paroled. Ellery has since been indicted on charges related to the passing of Cardoza. Ellery's defense is expected to focus on some pretty obvious mental health issues, as her legal team is preparing for psychiatric evaluations. Reports suggest that Allery has claimed memory gaps, particularly around the time of the incident, which her defense may use to argue for diminished responsibility. Additionally, there has been controversy surrounding her previous parole, with many in the community questioning how someone with her criminal history was released on parole months before this incident. Allery has also faced further legal trouble while in custody, including being charged after an altercation with another inmate. Authorities are still investigating the exact motive behind the shooting, but it doesn't really sound like there is one. It's scary to think of all the little variables that could have prevented this sort of outcome. Maybe Cardoza and his brother decided to work through their break that day. Or maybe instead of sitting in their van, they found a bench in a different area of the complex. Or maybe they decided to go pick up lunch. This sort of crime could literally have been any one of us just living our lives. It makes you wonder how many times that annoying red light you hit when you were late for something somehow, unknowingly, ended up saving your life. Number 5. Dental disasters. Monica Davis, an unlicensed dentist from Illinois, was arrested for running a fraudulent veneer and braces business that left many customers with severe dental issues. Operating under the name The Veneer Experts, she used TikTok to promote her services, convincing people she was improving smiles. Davis, however, didn't have the qualifications to practice dentistry, which apparently is something you should have if you're going to be a dentist. This, of course, led to a lot of patients leaving with severe dental issues. Unsurprisingly, many patients complained about the quality of Bailey's services, and one credited dentist, Dr. Laura Zalay, expressed concerns about the lasting damage Davis caused. She said that without proper care, many of Davis's patients could lose their teeth entirely. One victim, Monica Bailey, brought her daughter to Davis for braces. After their first appointment, Bailey wasn't able to ever schedule a follow-up as Davis had abruptly disconnected her contact numbers. Naturally, that freaked Bailey out, so she did a little online search and found that Davis had a mugshot that was connected to some illegal dental practices. Another customer, Ralph Jones, paid over $1,200 for a set of veneers, which should have been a huge red flag, since that's about the normal price range per tooth. So he got them put in, only to have them quickly decay and fall out. Authorities eventually discovered that Davis had been operating in both Illinois and Nevada without a license. Legal experts explained that practicing dentistry without certification in these states is a serious crime, typically handled with cease and desist letters followed by court action. Davis posted bail in Nevada after being arrested, but continued her fraudulent operations in Illinois. There, she was charged again for providing illegal dental services, including fake braces and poorly applied veneers that left clients with dental damage such as chipped teeth. Investigations have been ongoing, and the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation is considering imposing fines on Davis for each violation, potentially amounting to $10,000 per offense. This is pretty scary because we all just kind of assume that if someone has DDS on their office sign and a paper on the wall in their office that looks like a diploma, that they're legit, right? These days, it seems like it's becoming more and more necessary to check up on any professional you're going to trust with anything valuable to you. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Number 4. Putting knowledge to use. Dr. Connor Bowman, a former Mayo Clinic doctor who worked in toxicology, has been indicted by a Minnesota grand jury for the passing of his wife, Betty Bowman. Betty, a pharmacist at the same hospital, was allegedly given toxic substances by her husband after their open relationship fell apart. Initially charged with a certain second-degree crime, Bowman now faces an upgraded charge of the first-degree version, which carries a possible life sentence without parole if convicted. Here's an interesting fact. Botox is actually the most toxic naturally occurring substance in nature. Anyway, investigators revealed that the couple's marriage had deteriorated due to infidelity and other issues, with Betty ultimately threatening divorce. Betty became ill after drinking a smoothie mixed with alcohol, which she believed had caused her sudden sickness. She was admitted to the Mayo Clinic St. Mary's Hospital, where her condition worsened rapidly, leading to her passing just days later. Bowman, who was basically the guy you'd call at poison control if you needed help, was accused of attempting to have his wife's body cremated quickly and pressured officials not to perform an autopsy. However, law enforcement launched an extensive investigation that uncovered some disturbing details. Authorities discovered that Bowman had researched toxic doses of a medicine used to treat gout, which she didn't have, which was later found in Betty's system. Bowman allegedly calculated a toxic dose based on his wife's weight, leading to her passing due to organ failure. Beyond his suspicious actions surrounding Betty's passing, Bowman's behavior in the aftermath also raised red flags. Friends described him as emotionless and indifferent, going out for drinks shortly after his wife passed away. And we get that everyone deals with grief differently, but Bowman's vacant demeanor and lack of any sort of grief from such an unexpected tragedy struck everyone who saw it as suspicious. The indictment revealed that Bowman had been deeply in debt, and it was discovered that he had intended to claim a $500,000 life insurance policy on Betty's passing. In his attempts to cover his tracks, Bowman even searched online for ways to hide information from law enforcement, and if browser histories could be used in court, which sounds like a really stupid thing to do for someone so smart. Despite Bowman's efforts to conceal his actions, the medical examiner ruled Betty's passing as intentional due to the toxic levels of the medicine found in her system. As of the release of this video, Bowman remains in custody with bail set at $2 million, awaiting his next court date. Number 3. The passenger pickpocketing scheme. William Joseph Timothy, a former U.S. Customs and Border Protection officer stationed at Naples Airport, admitted to stealing more than $18,000 from international passengers over a series of thefts. Timothy, aged 43, committed 17 separate incidents of theft between May of 2023 and January of 2024. The investigation, led by the CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility, revealed that Timothy discreetly stole cash during border examinations and currency verifications. One particular theft involved the passenger arriving from the Bahamas. Here's an interesting statistic. Between 2004 and 2021, over 300 CBP officers and agents were arrested or disciplined for corruption-related activities, including bribery, smuggling, and theft. While conducting a currency check, Timothy helped himself to $2,200 from the traveler's money without their knowledge, because he apparently thought that checking something meant just taking it. Over time, this pattern of behavior led to a total of $18,700 being stolen. Timothy has since agreed to repay all the stolen funds to the victims and resigned from his position at the CBP as part of his plea agreement. His attorney said that Timothy regrets his actions and has taken full responsibility, because no one is more remorseful of their actions than when they're in court, right? Though the exact date for sentencing hasn't been set, Timothy faces up to 10 years in federal prison. This is scary because you have to go through customs to get back into your country. It's not like you can avoid it to protect yourself from someone going through your stuff. This sort of thing happens in the TSA as well, and it's always anxiety-inducing when you can't see your bag because some dude has decided to go through it. Number 2. Retirement savings vanished. As reported by Haley Sadler of the New York Times, Barry Heitlin, a 76-year-old retired lawyer living in Arlington, Virginia, fell victim to a complex online scam, losing almost his entire retirement savings. The criminals behind the scheme targeted him with precision, preying on his trust and convincing him he was helping federal investigators catch thieves who were after his money. Over the span of 3 months, Barry was manipulated by scammers into withdrawing around $740,000 from his accounts, thinking he was safeguarding his retirement funds as part of a federal investigation. It all began one day when Barry was having trouble accessing his 401k. He didn't really think much of it, since we all get our accounts messed up now and then, and we typically blame ourselves. But days later, when he was finally about to log in, a screen popped up telling him to call his account provider's fraud department. That call connected him with a man named Charles Hunt, who claimed to be a fraud investigator for the company. He explained that Barry's accounts were being targeted and asked if he was willing to help safeguard his money. Hunt made it seem like Barry would be aiding a government operation, setting the stage for a scam so elaborate that it felt like a scene from a thriller movie. Soon after, Barry was introduced to a second individual who called himself Hayden Smith. This person claimed to work for a bank where Barry had his IRA and other savings. Smith, using scare tactics, told Barry that his accounts were linked to illegal purchases made in China, creating an atmosphere of fear and urgency. As if to solidify the ruse, a third individual, posing as an IRS agent named Finn Whitrock, entered the picture. He explained that Barry's retirement savings were at risk, but assured him they could transfer the funds into a federal government locker for safekeeping. Barry, wanting to protect his money and believing he was part of a legitimate operation, began making large withdrawals from his retirement accounts. He transferred the money through Bitcoin, ATMs, and wire transfers, thinking it was all going to a secure federal account. Throughout the process, the scammers instructed Barry not to tell anyone, not even his family, making it feel like less of a fraud and more like a Bourne movie. As the scam unfolded, Barry withdrew $113,000 from his checking and savings accounts. But the real blow came when the scammers targeted his IRA, containing more than $830,000. Barry's longtime financial advisor became suspicious when Barry explained he was buying a property in Canada for his children, an excuse the scammers had coached him to use. When that lie didn't hold, Barry tried another, claiming he needed the money to buy gold, which eventually led the bank to ask even more questions. At this point, the scammers began planting seeds of doubt in Barry's mind about his financial advisor. They suggested that his advisor might have leaked his personal information, causing Barry to press harder for access to his money. With no success at his bank, Barry rolled his IRA over to a different institution, following the scammers' instructions. In less than 2 weeks, he drained his account. Barry's next move involved purchasing gold. Over time, he made 3 separate purchases, totaling around $416,000 of gold ingots and coins. Following each purchase, he would hand over the gold in brown paper bags to drivers who arrived at his apartment building, truly believing that this was part of his cooperation with the investigation. The complex scheme finally unraveled when a detective from New Jersey contacted Barry, explaining to him that his name had been found on a receipt for a gold purchase linked to a scam. Realizing what had happened, Barry was completely devastated. His life savings had been stolen, and naturally, the emotional toll was crippling. The sad thing is, Barry's troubles didn't end with the scam. Since the money had been withdrawn from tax-advantaged accounts, Barry now faced a $285,000 tax bill for the previous year. To the government, it appeared as if Barry had enjoyed an extravagant lifestyle. Though his lawyer is working on securing a tax ruling and some legislation might help him regain part of what was lost, the road to recovery is long and uncertain. Barry's story is just one of many in a growing wave of cybercrime targeting older Americans. People over 60 lost more than $3.4 billion to scams in 2023 alone, with criminals using increasingly sophisticated methods to drain retirement savings. These schemes are difficult to trace, with the stolen funds often laundered through crypto or sent to overseas accounts, making recovery nearly impossible. Now, Barry lives with the lasting effects of the scam. His once comfortable retirement has been shattered, and while he reflects on the ordeal, he knows he can't dwell on it too much. Thanks to the support of his family, he's trying to move forward, even though the impact of the scam will stay with him for a long time. The scam is scary because, while it may not happen to most of you, the types of victims being targeted, specifically those who are retirement aged, are susceptible. Barry was a former lawyer who seemed to have his wits about him. Yeah, being a lawyer doesn't automatically mean someone is smart, but it's kind of usually means they're smart, right? However, don't think there aren't any elderly folks with tricks up their sleeve. Like this grandma, for example. She was caught back in 2010 for dealing out of her home. As always, please warn your loved ones of scams like this. Remind them to be skeptical of unsolicited contacts. Never use the numbers provided in unexpected pop-ups. Never give remote access to any of your accounts. And discuss any situation with a family member or friend they trust. Number 1. A minor dispute. A Las Vegas pastor, Nick Davey, tragically lost his life during a confrontation outside his home. The horrifying incident occurred as his family, including his 2 children, watched from nearby. The conflict allegedly involved another resident in their gated community, Joe Junio, who had been in a dispute with the family for weeks over complaints Davey had made to their homeowners association. So, what were these complaints that led to someone losing their life? The trouble began when Davey apparently reported Junio to the HOA for keeping chickens and dogs at her property, which apparently wasn't allowed. On the night of the incident, as the Davey family was preparing to leave their home, Junio happened to drive past Davey and his family. She then parked her car and rolled down the window, which led to the verbal exchange between the two, with Davey apparently asking her what her problem was with them before stepping toward her vehicle. At that point, Junio opened her car door and discharged her firearm, hitting him in the stomach. She then turned the firearm on Davey's wife, Sarah, injuring her as well. The whole time, the Davey children, aged 12 and 15, recorded the tragic incident from their car. Davey was taken to a local hospital where he later passed away from his injuries. Sarah survived the incident and has since filed a lawsuit. The lawsuit claimed that the HOA was aware of the increasing threats from Junio but failed to take action. Junio, who worked in real estate, was arrested at the scene and charged with multiple serious offenses. As of the release of this video, she's being held on $300,000 bail. The family has since moved out of their home due to the traumatic events. It's scary that this whole incident happened because of HOA complaints, isn't it? HOAs are annoying, but they're there for the benefit of everyone in the community. It's sad that because of chickens and dogs, everyone involved had their lives forever changed. What are some of the most despicable crimes people will commit? Let's find out, starting with number 6, the prodigal son. Nicholas Shaughnessy, a 22-year-old from Austin, Texas, pleaded guilty to patricide and received a 35-year prison sentence for hiring someone to take out his father. His mother, who survived, had also been targeted in the plot. The crime stemmed from Nicholas's greed and desire to gain access to his parents' $2 million life insurance policy and their well-known jewelry business. Along with his ex-wife, Jacqueline Edison, Nicholas masterminded the plot, but the plan spiraled into a confrontation that ended his father's life. Nicholas's father, Ted Shaughnessy, owned Gallery Jewelers in Austin, a well-respected business in the community. On the night of the incident in March of 2018, Ted and his wife, Corey, were in their home when they heard an intruder. Armed and prepared to defend themselves, Ted confronted the man, but was hit by a round in the hallway of their house, ending everything for him. Corey fought back and managed to survive, though her life was forever changed by the ordeal. Investigators quickly focused on Nicholas as a suspect. Evidence revealed that he had remote access to his parents' home security system, which he turned off that night. Nicholas had also promised one hired goon, Johnny Leon, $100,000 to carry out the crimes. Another accomplice, Arian Smith, was found to have played a role in facilitating the crime. Both Leon and Smith, like Nicholas, were sentenced to 35 years in prison. During the investigation, detectives uncovered overwhelming evidence, including cell phone records that put Nicholas near the scene of the crime. These records contradicted Nicholas's claim that he and his wife were in College Station at the time. The court also heard that Nicholas had initially planned to do the deed himself, but ultimately lacked the fortitude to follow through, instead hiring the job out. Despite pleading guilty and taking responsibility for his role in the crime, Nicholas faced strong opposition from his extended family. In a statement, they expressed their disappointment with his plea deal, feeling that he should never be released. His mother, however, consulted with the district attorney and ultimately found the plea deal acceptable, though she still struggled with her son's actions. In interviews from prison, Nicholas has reflected on the crime, expressing regret and taking accountability for what he described as a cowardly act. He admitted to his role in planning the crime, but distanced himself from claims made by his ex-wife Jacqueline Edison, who has alleged mistreatment and portrayed herself as a victim. Nicholas, seeking some redemption, hopes to rebuild his relationship with his mother, who has continued to support him to some degree. While serving out his sentence, Nicholas is working towards an associate degree and is focused on self-improvement. He understands that his future parole eligibility, in just under 20 years, will be determined by his behavior in prison and the parole board's assessment of his rehabilitation. Regardless, Nicholas knows that the damage done to his family and his life cannot be undone. It looks like a lot of long nights are on the way for Nicholas, and we can't say he doesn't deserve them. Number 5. Hollywood Terror. Samuel Haskell Jr. was charged with 3 counts of ending someone's life, even though law enforcement has only recovered partial remains. The 35-year-old, a low-budget film director and son Samuel Haskell III, former VP at William Morris, was accused of offing his wife May Haskell and her parents, Gaoshin Li and Yangjiang Wang. Authorities believe the remains found belong to May, but no further evidence has been recovered to conclusively identify the victims. Haskell's arrest followed a chilling discovery when some remains were found in a dumpster near his home. Investigators were tipped off after day laborers he hired to remove heavy trash bags from his property became suspicious and uncovered some remains in one of the bags. Though they returned the bags and attempted to distance themselves, they later reported the discovery to the police. Surveillance footage later revealed Haskell discarding a large, heavy bag in a nearby dumpster, further deepening suspicions. Police found blood and other biological evidence from 3 individuals at the home Haskell shared with his wife and her parents. The couple's 3 children, who were safely found at school during the investigation, are now with family. Haskell, known in his neighborhood for an unusual obsession with weapons and a career in strange films, remains behind bars. His arraignment has been delayed, but he could face life in prison without parole if convicted. Investigators continue their search for more remains, although they acknowledge the difficulty of recovering them from local landfills where trash is rapidly buried. At the time of this report, Haskell has shown no sign of cooperating with authorities. He continues to plead not guilty to the charges. Haskell has been on watch since his arrest and concerns of self-harm, and has appeared in court shirtless, wearing a self-harm prevention garment, as his lawyer cited concerns about his mental health. His high-profile family remains silent as the tragic details of the case unravel. If he wanted to get away from his wife and her family that badly, divorce would have been a lot easier, right? His dad has more than enough money to make it happen. But obviously, this kid had a few wires loose, which is why the outcome is tragic and probably could have been avoided. Number 4. Swiping wrong. Sierra Insco, a 22-year-old from Mississippi, was sentenced to 40 years in prison for the tragic passing of Carson Sistrunk, a 24-year-old man she met online. Insco pleaded guilty to the crime, which occurred back in 2022, and she'll serve at least 35 years before becoming eligible for parole. Carson's body was found in an oil field a few days after he went missing, and authorities quickly linked his passing to Insco. Carson, known as a kind and humble individual who loved hunting and fishing, had met Insco online, and the two had planned to meet in person. After his disappearance, investigators found Insco driving Carson's truck, which quickly led to her arrest. Evidence of foul play was apparent, with a large amount of blood found in the vehicle. The case drew more attention to Insco's shady and troubled past. Insco was no stranger to manipulation. Friends and acquaintances described her as someone who regularly took advantage of others, often swindling money and stealing vehicles. She even faked a cancer diagnosis to live rent-free with someone for sympathy. These behaviors painted a clear picture of a manipulative and dangerous person. Carson's family and friends were devastated by the loss. His obituary described him as a loving son and a best friend to many. Those who knew him well spoke of his passion for outdoor activities, his warm personality, and his love for fishing with his father. His passing left a deep void in the lives of those close to him. The court case against Insko revealed even more about her lifestyle, including her activity on social media platforms and her tendency to deceive others. She portrayed herself as a carefree country girl, but lived a life with lies and betrayal. Even before meeting Carson, Insko had stolen vehicles and tricked people into giving her money, showing a clear pattern of deceit that ultimately led to this tragedy. Number 3. Bail and betrayal. Joselito Martinez and Tanya Worster, both from Central Florida, were arrested and charged after exploiting at least 3 women over a 2-year period. According to investigators, the couple bonded the women out of jail and provided housing in exchange for forcing them into explicit acts for money. This illegal operation generated more than $300,000. Martinez and Worster controlled the victims through threats, forced tattoos, and other degrading acts. Investigators revealed that Martinez even used illegal substances to further manipulate the women. The couple's child was often present in the home where these activities took place, making the whole case just that much worse. The Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation believe there may be additional victims, as Martinez and Worster frequently sought out new individuals to exploit. Martinez and Worster also had previous run-ins with the law, having both served time for organized fraud in connection with an unrelated unemployment scam. After his trial, Joselito Martinez was sentenced to 55 years in prison, while Tanya Worster was charged with deriving support from the proceeds of a crime. The couple exploited 3 women and profited $300,000 from their forced adult work. Martinez controlled the victims through threats and branding, while Worster managed the financial side, making them a horrific duo. Investigators are still seeking additional victims who may not have come forward, and as of the release of this video, Worster remains in custody, awaiting further legal proceedings. It's weird to think that doing things like that made sense to these two, and makes us glad that they're going away for a long time. Seriously, what kind of people even think of a scam like this? Number 2. The Wedding Crashers. Manuel Gonzalez and Dulce Gonzalez were celebrating their wedding with close family and friends in the backyard of their St. Louis home when a tragic event unfolded. The couple had been together for over a decade and had 2 young children. The evening celebration turned into a nightmare when 2 armed masked men stormed into the gathering. Around 1 a.m., the men crashed the reception and demanded money from the guests, but didn't take anything. Instead, they turned their weapons on Manuel, discharging multiple rounds into him. The exact reason why the men discharged their weapons at Manuel isn't entirely clear. One theory from the bride's sister is that Manuel may have been reaching for his wallet to comply with their demands, and the men might have mistaken his action as a threat, possibly thinking he was going for a weapon himself. Whatever their reason, the men then fled the scene on foot, leaving the family in shock and horror. Manuel was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, where he fought for his life. However, thankfully, there have been small signs of improvement, such as some hand movements. His family members, who are obviously still reeling from the event, described him as a devoted father and hard-working husband who didn't deserve such a fate. Authorities are continuing their investigation, but as of the release of this video, no arrests have been made. The bride's family are pleading with the community to come forward with any information or footage that could help identify the suspects. Despite the tragedy, the family expressed their gratitude for the overwhelming support they received from the community. A GoFundMe was set up to assist the family during this incredibly difficult time. As they wait for answers, the bride and her family continue to hold out hope for Manuel's recovery while fearing for their safety as the suspects remain at large. We hope that these guys are caught and that justice gets served. Number 1. Life after freedom. Today, we're giving an update on the notorious Turpin family, whose story shocked the nation when details of their horrific crimes came to light. David and Louise Turpin, the California couple responsible for holding their 13 children captive in their own home, were both sentenced to 25 years to life. David Turpin was moved to a new prison facility in 2024 over concerns for his safety. Prison officials haven't disclosed his exact location, but the fact that he actually had to be secretly transferred really shows just how high profile the nature of his case is. His wife Louise remains incarcerated at a women's facility in Chowchilla, California. While their movements are tracked, their children can request updates on where they're housed and when parole hearings will take place. The Turpins gained national infamy in 2018 after one of their daughters, 17-year-old Jordan, bravely escaped the family's home and alerted the authorities to the horrifying conditions she and her siblings had endured for years. Malnourished and shackled, the children ranged in age from 2 to 29, and many were so weak that even the adult siblings appeared much younger. Their rescue revealed years of mistreatment, including being denied food, hygiene, and basic medical care. Both David and Louise Turpin pleaded guilty in 2019 to a range of charges. The trial captivated the public, not only due to the shocking details of the case, but also the heartbreaking testimonies from the Turpin children. Several of them bravely shared their experiences in court, recounting the years of isolation and fear they faced. Despite their trauma, many of the children have tried to move forward with their lives. Jordan Turpin, who led the escape, has become somewhat of a social media figure, sharing her journey with hundreds of thousands of followers on TikTok. Meanwhile, her brother Joshua, now in his 30s, continues to battle nightmares stemming from his childhood, but has found strength in his recovery. He spoke in court about his journey and how he has forgiven his parents despite the years of suffering. Life for the Turpin children after their rescue hasn't been easy. The 6 youngest siblings, placed into foster care, faced further terrible treatment at the hands of their new caregivers. A lawsuit against Riverside County and ChildNet Youth and Family Services was filed in 2022, alleging neglect and mistreatment. This legal battle is still ongoing. The Turpins maintained an outward appearance of a happy, devoted family, even taking their children on family trips to Disneyland and renewing their vows in Las Vegas. However, these public displays mask the horrific reality behind closed doors. Social media photos showed the family in matching outfits at Disneyland, seemingly joyful, while back home, the children endured unimaginable torment. Though David and Louise Turpin's time in the public eye may be over, the scars they left on their children will probably be there forever. The court's decision to sentence them to 25 years to life means they'll serve at least 25 years in prison before they're eligible for parole. After that, a parole board will review their case and decide if they can be released. However, given the severity of their crimes, it's likely the two will remain in prison for much longer, possibly the rest of their lives. This Asian Kim Kardashian and her boyfriend shot their former business partners. They threw a toxic substance that permanently changed a poor lady's life just because she was an ex-girlfriend. This so-called pastor stole over $1 million in merchandise from the Home Depot. Who are a few of the other most despicable criminals around? Let's find out, starting with number 6, despicable dealings. In an update to a story we've previously covered, Oliver Carafa and Lucy Lee, both from Toronto, were sentenced to life in prison for orchestrating a plan that led to the loss of Tyler Pratt's life and left his partner, Jordan Romano, gravely injured. The case, filled with betrayal and sinister plans, drew national attention, finally ending in a dramatic courtroom conclusion. Carafa and Lee were business associates of Pratt and Romano, at first presenting themselves as trusted partners. Pratt, a father of 2, traveled to Ontario to meet Carafa and Lee, who had arranged a meeting at a warehouse in a place called Stony Creek. They claimed the warehouse would be used to start a grow operation involving a certain plant, but it was later revealed that this meeting was actually a trap. Pratt, who was also seeking repayment of millions he had invested with Carafa, was completely unaware that the pair had no intention of ever returning the money. The real plan was just to eliminate both Pratt and Romano. The evening unfolded with chilling precision. According to Romano's testimony, she and Lee were sitting in a vehicle outside the warehouse, supposedly waiting for a real estate agent to arrive. At some point, Lee stepped out of the car, leaving Romano inside while Pratt and Carafa stood nearby outside the vehicle. Lee, stepping out, appeared to signal Carafa to act. Carafa then discharged a firearm he had brought, targeting first Pratt and then Romano. Romano sustained critical injuries but managed to crawl to the road and flag down help. Tragically, Pratt, who was targeted alongside her, didn't survive the incident. To make matters worse, Romano, who was 13 weeks pregnant at the time, also lost the pregnancy due to her injuries. Carafa and Lee's preparation included creating false alibis by swapping Lee's phone SIM card and getting rid of key evidence, such as vehicles tied to the crime. After realizing Romano had survived, they fled the country, leading to an international manhunt that ended with their arrest in Hungary. Romano, who survived the harrowing ordeal despite being critically injured, was obviously a critical witness in the trial. She provided testimony recounting the events, which were corroborated by surveillance footage and other evidence. Romano shared that she still faces physical and emotional scars, but expressed gratitude for her survival. So ultimately, Lee and Carafa were given life in prison. The sentencing was a somber moment for Pratt's family, who described him as a devoted father and beloved son. While they may feel some relief about the sentence, it likely brings little solace, because while Lee and Carafa received harsh punishments, it still pales in comparison to what that family lost. Number 5. Bitcoin kidnapping. Tianfu Guo, a 35-year-old Chinese national, was sentenced to 12 years in prison for orchestrating the dramatic kidnapping of a wealthy businessman. His ransom demand? $15 million in Bitcoin. But what unfolded during the harrowing 2-day ordeal revealed a chilling plan that left investigators racing against time. Chinese businessman Dylan Huang was enjoying a round of golf at a high-end course one day when 5 men rushed him and forced him into a black Audi in broad daylight. The group took him to a secluded vacation rental where he was held in a small cage. His captors then demanded $15 million in Bitcoin for his release. During his captivity, Huang endured tough conditions. Meanwhile, investigators were already closing in. Acting on witness accounts and surveillance footage, police tracked the kidnapper's vehicle, leading them to a guy named Tianfu Guo. He was arrested the following evening in London's Chinatown. Inside his car, police found an SD card containing surveillance footage of the victim, directly tying him to the crime. Shortly after Guo's arrest, the kidnappers released Huang in a remote area, likely to avoid further attention. Injured and blindfolded, Huang managed to find his way to a nearby house, where he called the police. He was later taken to a hospital and has since made a full physical recovery. Although Guo has been sentenced to 12 years in prison, some suspects remain at large, believed to have fled the UK. Law enforcement continues to pursue those responsible, working to ensure everyone involved is brought to justice. It's crazy how the kidnappers handled their demands and escape. Despite their ridiculous demand of $15 million in Bitcoin, they released Huang immediately after Guo was arrested, even though no ransom was paid. It's as if their entire operation unraveled the moment Guo was caught, and they panicked and decided to just abandon the scheme entirely. And the fact that Guo kept surveillance footage of the victim on an SD card in his car was about as stupid as you can get. It sounds like Huang was lucky, because that whole situation could have gone in a very different direction. Number 4. Risky business. Robert Pooley, a 49-year-old from Encampo, California, was sentenced to 2 years in prison for running unauthorized skydiving courses at a facility that already had a troubled history. Despite having his certification suspended in 2015, Pooley continued training over 100 new instructors at the Lodi Parachute Center using a digital signature from a certified examiner to falsely validate his courses. Each participant paid approximately $1,100 for the training. And the facility that Pooley worked at, unsurprisingly, was known for its lack of strict regulations and has been tied to 28 incidents since the mid-1980s. These included parachutes failing to deploy properly, mid-air collisions, and hard landings that led to severe injuries. Reports also talked about outdated equipment and insufficient oversight, raising broader concerns about the center's overall safety practices. And despite these incidents, the facility continued to operate, drawing criticism for its handling of high-risk activities. Pooley's fraudulent practices came under scrutiny after two students, Yong Kwan and Tyler Turner, lost their lives during a tandem jump back in 2016. The incident prompted an investigation into the facility, which exposed Pooley's fraudulent practices and led to his eventual conviction for wire fraud. Pooley's actions extended beyond forgery. When victims of his scheme sought refunds following the tragedy, he refused to repay them. Meanwhile, Tyler Turner's family pursued a civil lawsuit against the facility's owner, resulting in a $40 million judgment they reportedly have yet to collect. Pooley was sentenced to 2 years in prison, making a rare legal resolution for the center, which somehow continues to operate despite its controversial track record. We do think, in most reasonable cases, fun comes first and safety comes second. But this opinion refers more to doing generally somewhat dangerous things, such as trying to slip and slide down a hill, then flying off a small cliff and launching into a lake. That opinion does not, and never will, apply when we're jumping out of a plane. In cases like that, it's safety first, second, third, and fifth. If the Google reviews of a skydiving facility even casually mentions lax safety protocols or a history of accidents, that's not a place we're going to skydive from. It's weird that they're even still in business. Number 3, faking charity. Candace Leard, formerly known as Candace Rivera, the founder of Utah's anti-trafficking nonprofit Exodus, was sentenced to at least 3 years in prison. Her sentencing follows a series of embezzlement schemes that defrauded donors and volunteers alike. But behind the courtroom drama lies a deeper story of betrayal and the impact of her actions. Leard's legal troubles stem from over 30 felony charges, including theft, fraud, and forgery. As CEO of Exodus, she solicited over $1.6 million in donations, claiming the funds supported anti-trafficking efforts and rescue operations. Instead, investigators uncovered that the funds actually supported personal luxuries, including homes, cars, and vacations. She even fabricated credentials, falsely presenting herself as a nurse and a United Nations employee to bolster her credibility. Her schemes extended to manipulating friends, colleagues, and even indigenous communities for financial gain. Victims such as Aura Argyle, a former assistant, shared how Leard exploited their trust, leaving emotional and financial devastation. Leard opened credit accounts in others' names, leaving them to deal with the ruined credit and unpaid debts. Despite pleading no contest to multiple charges, Leard used her court appearance to shift focus to her own difficulties, whining about her significant personal hardship since her arrest. However, Judge Christine Johnson roundly criticized this approach, calling her statements tone-deaf and emphasizing that the harm done to her victims far outweighed her claimed struggles. During the passing down of the 3-year prison sentence, the court heard powerful impact statements from victims, many of whom had invested time and resources into Exodus, truly believing in its mission to combat people trafficking. Volunteers, survivors, and donors detailed how their trust, stories, and funds were exploited for personal gain. Some even questioned whether any of Exodus's purported rescue operations were genuine. After the hearing, victims gathered to share their experiences and support one another, finding solace in their shared pursuit of justice. While reflecting on the betrayal they endured, they were satisfied with the outcome and began the process of moving forward together. It's crazy to think that someone leading a company dedicated to helping victims of some of the worst crimes imaginable would use donated money to treat herself. This wasn't just a case of ripping off a business. She was stealing from people who had been kidnapped and exploited. How does someone like that even sleep at night, let alone enjoy a vacation? We suppose it's easy if you don't have a conscience. Number 2, the worst association. William D. Bernardino, a 49-year-old from Boynton Beach, Florida, was charged alongside 2 others for their roles in a terrible crime that left a 42-year-old woman with severe burns over much of her body. But what drove D. Bernardino to orchestrate such a vicious act? And how were the suspects tracked down? Authorities say D. Bernardino hired Betty Jo Lane, 38, and Jamar McNeil, 39, from Jacksonville, Florida, to carry out the task. Lane and McNeil rented a car and drove over 900 miles to southern New Jersey. The victim, who had just returned home from work, was targeted as she exited her car. Lane approached and threw a cup of highly caustic substance at her, causing burns to 35% of her body. Lane fled the scene in the rental car, which became a key lead. Investigators traced it to a Florida rental agency, linking the suspects to the vehicle. Authorities think the act was premeditated, with Lane and McNeil hired specifically to go after the victim. DiBernardino was allegedly the orchestrator and was apparently motivated by the fact that he was dumped, something he clearly didn't take well. The arrests required coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies across state lines. Apparently, it's a bit tricky when multiple states are involved. Investigators worked together to track down DiBernardino and his accomplices, who were located and taken into custody in Florida. The U.S. Marshal Service also assisted in the operation, ensuring all three suspects were apprehended swiftly. The suspects were taken into custody in Florida and are expected to be transferred to New Jersey to face charges. Investigators gathered substantial evidence linking the trio to the incident. Key pieces include the rental car used in the act, traced back to a Florida agency, and directly connected to Betty Jo Lane and Jamar McNeil. Travel records revealed the pair drove over 900 miles from Florida to New Jersey just days before. Additionally, authorities believe William DiBernardino paid Lane and McNeil to carry out the crime, further tying him to the scheme. While the case is ongoing as of the release of this video, these findings leave little doubt about the premeditation and exactly who is involved. As the victim continues her recovery, it's looking like these three are going to be put away for a long time. Number 1. Anointed Liquidator. Robert Dell, a former pastor in Florida, has been charged in connection with a large-scale retail theft operation. Authorities allege Dell and his accomplices stole over $1.4 million worth of merchandise from Home Depot stores across Central Florida, selling the items through an eBay store called Anointed Liquidator. The operation reportedly involved several individuals, including Dell's wife Jacqueline and his mother Karen. The allegations paint a picture of an elaborate operation. Prosecutors claim two accomplices would visit multiple Home Depot locations daily, stealing high-value items, for example, power tools from brands such as Milwaukee and DeWalt. The stolen goods were then delivered to Dell, who allegedly coordinated their sale online. Dell's wife and his mother are accused of assisting with shipping the items and managing the eBay account, which had been active since 2011 and reportedly sold 35,000 products before being shut down. Investigators believe the theft ring operated for several years, targeting stores across 7 counties. Home Depot's loss prevention team and Florida's Organized Retail Crime Exchange Task Force worked together to track the suspects. The operation's scope was significant, with Home Depot estimating that its losses could total as much $5 million. Authorities accused Dell of exploiting his roles as both a pastor and the operator of a church-affiliated halfway house by involving many residents in the thefts. One accomplice reportedly claimed to have earned up to $10,000 a day while working with Dell. In addition to the theft charges, Dell is also facing allegations of dealing in stolen property and conspiracy to commit racketeering. His wife and his mother have also been charged with conspiracy and property theft. Bail was set at $750,000 for Dell and $250,000 for each of his accomplices. Following Dell's arrest, the Rock Church, where he previously served, publicly distanced itself from him, explaining that he hadn't been their pastor for several years. Meanwhile, the investigation has drawn attention to the growing issue of organized retail theft, which costs U.S. retailers billions annually. It's pretty crazy to think that Dell was able to keep this thing going for so long, to the point that he stole possibly $5 million worth of stuff. Like, that's a lot of stuff to steal for him to end up earning that much over 10 years. You'd think with the number of people likely involved over the years, someone would have turned him in. But we suppose, with someone claiming to have been making $10,000 a day, silence really is golden. Click to watch one of these next videos.